What's good, everybody? What's going on, man? It's Stephen Qualls II, aka Mr. Qualified. It's your boy, and we're back with another episode of Qualified TV. Of course, this week I have another special guest, and y'all know every time I get somebody from the crib, it's a special episode. It's a special episode every time. But I will let her go ahead and introduce herself, and then we will get right into the interview as we typically do. So let the people know who you are and what it is that you do.
Oh, okay. My name is Santana Coleman. I am a filmmaker based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm my my intros can be a lot. I try to get the energy high right away. But no, so what exactly got you into filmmaking, or when do you feel like you even fell in love with the idea of film, or just even telling stories in film? When did that start for you?
Yeah, I mean, storytelling definitely came first. So I was telling stories as a child. I was just always into whether it was like actually verbally telling stories, very long, drawn out, very detailed stories, or whether it was like writing stories. I did a lot of writing poetry, writing short stories, writing books. I read a lot. Like I was just kind of always into storytelling in some form. I played DAOs, which I now can correlate as an adult, like to my storytelling abilities, because DAOs was like a universe in my life. Like it wasn't no game. It wasn't just like for fun. It wasn't for play. Like I played DAOs to the time I woke up, to the time I went to sleep, and I woke back up like where we leave off at. Like it was a storyline. It wasn't just, oh, we're going to the mall. Like they had whole lives. And to me, that was kind of my intro to like character building. And then I don't know, randomly in middle school, I don't really have a great story as to like why I wanted to make movies, but sometime randomly in middle school, I was like, I want to direct movies, and it was a dream I never let go, and it was the only thing I could ever remember wanting to be as a filmmaker, and it kind of took off from there.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And the doll aspect honestly makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think creativity as children is potentially in its freest form, so I think that's something that's really, really cool. When you make that decision in middle school, I know you said you're not really sure exactly what the exact trigger point of it was, but do you remember what the first thing you felt like you had to do to kind of make that dream happen? Or what was the first step that you thought, okay, I know this is what I want to do. This is the first thing, or one of the first things I need to do to start making that dream a reality?
No, that's a really good question. I've never been asked that. I did not know what to do, especially in middle school. I feel like, contrary to other people, I was one of those people that like shot for the stars without even knowing how it was going to happen. I just was like, yep, this is going to be my life. So whatever, it's going to happen whenever it happens, however it happens. So in middle school, I just kind of was like, yeah, I'm going to be a filmmaker. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be famous. Going to be all those things. And then I just never let that go. And then, I mean, my mom put me into like different pre-college camps to try to help teach me like the skills of TV and film. But honestly, those were like the more childlike programs. So they weren't really, I guess they were teaching me some skills, but like not enough that I felt like this is really what's going to be the first step for me or like to take me anywhere. They just were temporary things. And then going to college, I honestly did not have a ton of support around college. Like I was kind of like the first person in my family to go to college. I didn't ask for support from people because I don't know why. I just didn't, especially like I'm sure I had resources at school that could have helped me pick a good college, but I just didn't ask. And I was going to this pre-college program at UW-Platteville, which is a very rural area in Wisconsin. And they basically, every time you become like a junior in high school or a senior or whatever, and you're in the program, they recruit you like, hey, this is the reasons you should come here. And it just made sense. It lined up because my boyfriend at the time, we were broken up, but I knew we was going to get back together. He was going, and he's my husband now. So I guess it was kind of good that I like followed him. He was going, and then they were talking about how cheap it was, it's close to home, you're going to get a refund check. Like they just lined it up to be like, oh, this makes sense. And because I was like a shoot for the stars sort of girl, in my mind, it was either New York Film Academy, which is where I had always wanted to go because it was the only film school I knew of. And I had gotten like brochures in the mail, and I was just like looking through these catalogs, dreaming of going there. And when I saw that price, I was like, okay, I guess if it's between New York Film Academy and UW-Platteville, sounds like I got to go to UW-Platteville. And
Right.
in my mind, I wasn't thinking about how college can really set you up for that first step if you're like to be a filmmaker. In a lot of ways, it does help catapult people into that industry. But in a lot of ways, like you kind of don't even need college. Like some people don't even need college to become a filmmaker. So it really just depends on who you are and what your journey is set to be. So in my mind, it wasn't going to stop me from going just because I didn't go to a film school. But while I was in college, I did start to feel very like disappointed and kind of like, man, maybe I should have chose a different school. This really ain't the right school. They didn't even have a film program when I first started. And then when they did come up with a film program, it was more like film studies. So they weren't teaching us how to make films. They were just teaching us how to study films. And it was not the school that I should have been at, but it just turned out to be what it was. So to answer your question, like I do feel like I never really knew what the right step was. I just kind of had faith that God was going to lead me to where I was supposed to go, and that like regardless of how I got there, it was going to happen. And then even the steps that kind of took me off track a bit still end up being the right way, because then I ended up here. So I guess that's kind of what I think about that.
Okay. No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, I mean, I don't feel like that's uncommon in regards to people kind of being in situations that don't seem to be right at the time. But of course, in hindsight, you're always where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be. You brought
Right.
up something very interesting though. I never took film study classes, but the major that I graduated in from undergrad was digital storytelling. So while that encompassed a lot of interesting things in regards to learning how to tell stories visually, learning how to operate different, not only what's the word, programs, but also just working with different types of cameras and learning how to shoot different styles and stuff like that. You brought up a really interesting point about film studies being like studying film as opposed to making film. So I think the difference is relatively obvious, but how would you say that difference of learning how to study films, does that play any role, or did it play any role for you in learning how to make films, or was it just something that was completely kind of separate for you?
Yes and no. I think I mean, I'm a Taurus. I'm a bit stubborn. Not no more really, but I used to be very stubborn. So when I realized that they weren't teaching me what I wanted to learn, I kind of tuned out. Like the stubborn part of me was like, I don't really, this ain't what I want to learn. Like, I don't really care. I was taking, so my major eventually, by the time they got it at the school, was media studies for my major and film studies for my minor. Now, media studies, because this was a rural town and this is in Wisconsin, they're teaching me broadcasting. They're
Mm.
teaching me how to be on the news, how to film the news, how to do telethons, like stuff that I did not care about. So I enjoyed it while I could, but I also kind of was like, I don't really need to know this stuff. This ain't really the lane I'm trying to go in. So I kind of didn't retain the information as well as I should have. Like I did learn some words and tools and whatever that could help me as a filmmaker, but because I didn't feel like that's what I was trying to learn, I didn't really pay attention enough. Film studies was studying films. And again, it could definitely, like now that I look back, it could have been very helpful to have paid attention in those classes and to have like really retained that information, because now as a filmmaker I'm like, yeah, actually I do need that stuff. To learn how to study a film and understand why decisions were made, especially if you want to be a director, is very important. But for me, it was like, if I'm not really learning how to shoot this movie, I don't care. So I guess I do wish I kind of would have paid more attention, because yeah, it is important, and they were teaching me stuff that could have been useful. But at the time I just did not find the correlation to it. But I did enjoy it for what it was while I could. You know what I'm saying? I just didn't take it as serious as I should have.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's real. I was really intrigued by that because I always think about how things that we're supposed to learn in college or things they teach us in college, how all that is supposed to translate and how a lot of it doesn't. But there are some things that in hindsight it can translate. It just doesn't maybe translate right away. It's a little bit of a more delayed effect. But
Right.
you talked about not um feeling like the college you went to necessarily had the best fit for what you wanted to do. Were you able to do projects, or were you able to kind of like dabble in filmmaking like in college, or did that not start, or did those opportunities not come until after the fact or after you graduated?
So again, I had always been very ambitious, very shoot for the stars. I created my own opportunity so nonchalantly. Like it was oh damn, I always call it an open study class. It's not an open study. It's one of those classes in college that you take where you are allowed to choose what you want to learn, basically. Like you choose a project you're going to complete for the course of the semester. And then you only meet with the class like maybe once a month, once every 2 months, something like that, just to check in.
Okay.
It's really bugging me that I can't think of the name of it, but I had one of those classes and she was like, what do y'all want to do for y'all project? And for me, it was automatically like, well, I'm going to make a film. And I say that I was fearless at that time because, oh my God, what I know now about filmmaking is like, I don't play about what I'm finna do, right? But
Right.
in college, and I mean, I'm proud of myself though, because I was brave enough to be like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I don't know how to do it, but I'm gonna just do it. So that's what I'm doing. And then I went out and I, rented a camera from the campus and I went out and I started shooting stuff. I figured out what I wanted to do. I basically created a documentary that I shot. I ended up editing it on my own. I like taught myself how to edit because at this point in class, I wasn't learning how to edit just yet. I did learn later how to edit, so I guess that's another skill I did get from college. But I taught myself how to edit. I did that. I shot it. I didn't really have sound necessarily, but if you want to say sound, I did sound. I did everything on that film, right? And then I put it together. And I did have to go a little longer from my open studies class, or whatever it's called. I had to like take another semester to finish it, and she gave me that like extension. And then I got an A in the class once I was done. And the documentary that I created was probably about an hour long. And I ended up showing it, like having screenings on campus. And then they were like offering extra credit to students who would come see it on campus. So I was having like packed out screenings, like several screenings on campus. And it was pretty cool. Like that part was really cool to me. And it kind of just affirmed for me that like, yeah, this is what I want to do. Like, this is real cool. And that opportunity got me a job on campus because when I was learning how to edit, I went to media technology services on campus and I just asked the guy who was working there, like, hey, can I use your office to edit my documentary? And he taught me how to edit super quick. Like he sat down with me for like 30 minutes, taught me the basics of editing and was like, call me or email me if you have other questions. And I did that. Every time I had questions, I did some research or I would call him or text him. And then by the time he saw how quick I had picked up on it, he offered me a job like at Media Technology Services. So then once I was done with the documentary, I was now going around campus filming like events. Like it was basically highlight videos that we would do for the campus. We would do like new student orientation events. We would cover the sporting events. We would cover just like whatever events on campus. So you go around campus, you do B-roll, stuff like that. And then you come back to the office and you edit it together and put it out on YouTube for the campus. And so I had worked there for like the last like for the next probably year and a half or 2 years, something like that, up until I got pregnant. So that opportunity led me to a job, and that job probably gave me the most experience that school had given me. And yeah, so I had made my first documentary in college.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's cool. And it's always cool. I was in a previous interview, I talked about how when you're on a college campus, I think now more than maybe then, we realize how great of a space that is to really get a gauge of how, like it's a perfect place to try things out. Like your community, your audience in a sense is already set for you. So now you get to just kind of play around and see, okay, what works, what doesn't, because you already have a lot of things in place. Like you don't have to go find, an audience. You don't have to go find these things. They're all right here or
A
looking
lot of
for something.
resources. Yeah,
Yeah.
resources, audience. It's just I really took college for granted for a lot of reasons. And I understand why I did, but you're right. Like later you look back and you're like, dang, that's such a good environment to just figure yourself out. And now I'll be able to lead my son to like figuring himself out. I used to always say he didn't have to go to college if he don't want to. And part of me still feels like that. But the other part of me is like, you gonna try it for at least a year. Like you ain't got no choice. I'm gonna force you to try it for at least a year because what you get from college, you don't get anywhere else. And I don't like the idea of like forcing our youth to just jump into adulthood. And college is not adulthood yet. And
Right.
even after college, I mean, it's adulthood, but not really. I don't like the idea of forcing them to think they got to have their life together by 18, by 21, by 25, because you don't. And I just think that if he gets a chance to go to college, it'll help him stay in his youth, but then also learn the skills to like grow up a bit.
Mm,
So now I'm gonna force him to go to college at least for a year. Then
mm,
I'll see how he feels, and I'll follow his lead after that. But yeah, you're right. Like college definitely gives you. But like I said, I didn't have that guidance in college to like really take the reins and like use it for what it was worth, you know, because honestly, after we had got recruited to the college, everybody who had been a part of the pre-college program, so I'm at a predominantly white institute,
mm.
and I'm immediately culture shocked because I grew up in Milwaukee where although people don't think, oh, there's black people in Milwaukee, I grew up in the hood, I grew up in the inner city to the point where everyone and everything around me was black. I
Mm.
could have easily been fooled to think that we were the majority in the world because
Right.
my world was all black. Like I didn't know nothing else. So going to Platteville, and even when I did see white people, it was so few and far between, or just like whatever I didn't even blink twice. I was like, oh, okay, it's a white person. Moving on, back to my black life. And then like going to college was like, oh my God, all these white people. It is like a rural town. So it's not just any old white people, it's farmer white people.
Yeah.
Like it was very different. And then all the people who recruited us and who had been a part of the pre-college program, they were black. Now these are all mentors that I've been with since middle school, like people that I have been looking up to and building relationships with. Even the students who doubled as counselors were black students. So
Mm.
by the time we came to Platteville, the students who were our counselors were graduating, they were transferring, they were dropping out. The people who were our mentors who had been a part of the program for years were now transferring to different schools, got better jobs, or they were quitting the college for whatever reason. Just one by one, everybody started leaving us. And it was just so depressing to me. So I say that to say I didn't have, my mama didn't go to college. Like nobody I really knew went to college enough that I could talk to them and be like, how do I make the most out of this? So I just ducked my head down and was like, I hate it here and I'm gonna just finish it out quietly. And I wish I would have just like enjoyed it more. Um, and we did have good times. Don't get me wrong. I partied. I did stuff that like I did try to enjoy the moment, but for the most part, I was miserable there, and I just was counting down the days to go home. So I
Mm.
think everything you're saying about how college can like give you that ready set audience, it can give you the resources, it can give you so many things you need. I wish I would have just like stayed in that, like enjoyed that period of my life a bit more.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting perspective. Even the perspective on how you're going to approach college with your son. I think we're just in a time where the idea of college, the purpose of college, all those things they're ever changing. And as much as college used to be seen as this necessary step, I think in aspects it can very much be necessary. But we've seen so many people be able to go on and achieve great things without needing that.
Right.
So yeah, it's always interesting to see, especially because this debt just the loan thing just came back. So
No,
anybody that get a chance to avoid that, y'all go ahead.
exactly.
But so after undergrad and after having that experience, how exactly do things look then? How does your career kind of take off, or does it take off then? Just what's that next kind of step or next phase for you as a filmmaker once you graduate undergrad?
So basically, I knew that I wanted to, because you need I mean, I assume this is every school, you need a internship to graduate, right? Like that's a part of your last hurrah before you can graduate. And so I knew, and my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, knew that we both wanted to do our internships back in Milwaukee. Like we just was like, let's see if we could walk the stage early and then go to Milwaukee and finish it off. They approved that. They let us walk the stage. So we like graduated early. It wasn't really early because we had a kid and that slowed us up in college. So we technically still did 5 years in school, but we walked the stage earlier than like a semester early than we were supposed to. And then we came back to Milwaukee. And before we came back, like he had already had a lead for a job. I had already had a lead. So I called my lead and he knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody. I didn't know we had any film stuff in Milwaukee. I did not think it was going to be possible for me to work in film in Milwaukee. I just was like, dang, I'm gonna have to go somewhere else. I'm gonna have to figure it out. But I knew a guy who worked at a radio station and he said he knew like a filmmaker here. And I didn't know no filmmaker people here. So that like, honestly, my dream felt so unique that I don't even know how I held on to it for so long because I never really got to meet nobody else who was doing what I wanted to do. And so he introduced me to somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody who knew Brad Lichtenstein from 371 Productions. And I didn't know it at the time, but 371 Productions was basically the biggest documentary production company in Milwaukee. And it had been for the last, I don't know how many years, honestly, but now he's going on like 20 some years now. And it wasn't always that big, obviously, during all those years, but like he's pumping out good films, and he's been nominated for awards. He has a big office. He has a staff and a team. And so I was like, dang, I didn't know we had this here. And so I did a virtual interview, and he offered me the job over Zoom. And so I was like, cool. And I basically became the intern on this project called When Claude Got Shot, which is a documentary that follows a man named Claude Motley, who was born and raised in Milwaukee, and he moves his family away due to the violence and the lack of opportunities here. And he came back for a class reunion where he was shot in the jaw by a 15-year-old during an attempted carjacking. And then 2 days later, and he survives, he drives himself to the hospital. 2 days later, the 15-year-old attempts to rob someone else, and she has her conceal and carry license. So she shoots the 15-year-old in self-defense. And so it's like the documentary and the story of how these three lives connected in this weekend of gun violence, and now these three people are connected forever, and what the after effects of that looks like. And so at this point, it had only been about a year they had been shooting, and so he asked me to come on the project as an intern, and that was perfect for me because unfortunately, growing up in Milwaukee, gun violence was just something that was a part of all of our stories. And so it was just like, oh, this would be cool to work on, whatever. So when I came back to Milwaukee, I think I was here for maybe a week before I started my job. So I had a job straight out of college. It was the internship, and I was getting paid for it because at this point, like, I mean, first of all, I got a kid. I wasn't finna come do no free internship. I was negotiating, like, listen, this is a job for me. Like, I'm already out of school, so you can use me as many hours as you need me, but I got to get paid. So it was a paid internship. And then after I got my diploma from that, it turned into a position. So I think I came on as a PA initially. And then I was like a full-time PA. And then our producer at the time quit. And I remember being so heartbroken because she was a Black woman and I was learning so much from her. But her quitting was kind of a blessing in disguise because it forced me to be able to move up to associate producer, which just gave me a lot more responsibility. I'm sure it probably came with more money. It came with like all the things that like now I need you to do more work because we have one less person on the team. And then over the years, I kept working on it and I became the co-producer. And then the film premiered in 2021 at South by Southwest. And then 2022, we were on PBS. Then at the end of 22, we won an Emmy, and things just kept snowballing from there. And then we started our impact campaign, and I really wanted to join that. So I joined the impact campaign and I learned how to become an impact producer, which was beautiful and a whole nother journey. And I know you probably got hella questions. I'm skipping years here, but I just wanted to say that like after college, I jumped headfirst into my career, and I didn't realize it at the time, but that it snowballed into becoming exactly like what it was supposed to be. Is kind of what I'm trying to get at.
Right. No, that's perfect. I feel like I do a decent job of kind of like jumping back. So it's cool. But getting that experience right out of undergrad is amazing because being somebody currently who is working in the industry and working in a job where like I'm able to do it and I don't have a problem doing it, but the passion level isn't super high. I realize how common it is for people to graduate and not necessarily have the opportunity to dive head first into exactly what they want to do. So you even having that opportunity just speaks wonders to, what you've been saying in regards to the type of person you are and the type of person that, in sixth grade said, I want to do films, and even getting the opportunity. So the first film that you had the opportunity to work on post undergrad ended up winning an Emmy. That's what I summarized from what you said.
Yes.
And I mean, even then that experience in and of itself is just amazing, just crazy in general. So I mean, from all of that, like even with how all of that kind of snowballs, do you feel like things are moving fast at the time? Like, do you feel like things are flying, or are you kind of just lost in everything you're learning and all the different type of opportunities you're getting and the promotions you're able to get and things of that nature? Like, do you realize how much is happening and how fast things are kind of moving, or is that more of a hindsight thing?
No, I say that now just because I sum up the years we worked on the project, right? But like in the midst of it, no, it took years to get to every single step I talked about. So at the time, no, it was slow days. It was definitely slow. It was like working when people see When Claude Got Shot, it is a very emotional story. People tend to cry. People tend to, I mean, it's a story about gun violence and loss, and well, not even loss, just like, I mean, yeah, loss. Even it doesn't have to be death, but it is a story about a loss of a young boy who goes to prison for gun violence, and you know what his story was, and the loss of a man who was in law school and had to put his life on hold because he was shot, or because he was sitting in his car and doing nothing to nobody, and then loss of a woman who was getting her nursing degree and being a mother and then experienced PTSD to the point where she had to move out of her neighborhood and move her kids away. So it's a lot of stuff going on in the film that it's heavy, it's emotionally heavy, and there were days that there were tears, you know. There were days that there was tears for the characters and for what was happening in their lives. There was days that there was tears for me because this work is hard. There were days that things were slow and boring, like, you know. So no, I did not realize exactly how fast things were going or how amazing things were going. A lot of times, like, I did realize how amazing it was going, but it technically was going slower than the way I just summed it up. But I will say after probably 2020 was probably when we stopped shooting, and then or I should say filming, because when I talk about stories like this, it's hard to like shooting, filming.
Yeah.
We stopped filming around 2020, I believe. Snoop Dogg came on as our executive producer. We got into South by Southwest, like all these things started happening. I will say probably around that time, things did start to go a bit faster, because after we did South by Southwest, we did a festival run. So now we had all these different festivals. Unfortunately, it was during COVID, so I didn't get the full festival experience like I wanted because a lot of stuff was virtual. So unfortunately, we didn't really I did have my own premiere party for my family, and I had a red carpet there, and I did all the, you know, the big shebang for that. But like, we didn't really have a big in-person rollout for the film at that time. And then, like I said, PBS happening, the Impact campaign, and it was so much stuff happening with the Impact campaign that we did. We have a mural on 12th and North, and that was a big activation for us. That was a big accomplishment. We have a bus stop mural on 60th and Capitol. We had so many things happening during our Impact campaign that was just like vital moments during this journey, that I would say the Impact campaign is what feels like it went fast, and a lot of amazing things was just popping off. But making the film it's a slow process to make a film, especially a documentary. So yeah.
For sure. No, absolutely. And I definitely didn't mean to discredit any part of the process by
No.
summarizing it in that way. But no, that's a great segue. I personally, I'm a huge fan of the documentary style. I know for me, being a sports fan, like seeing 30 for 30s as a kid, like the idea of there being this like intricate and intimate way of storytelling, like using the people who were involved to tell the story, that just always, I don't know, for me, like that always pulled me in. So documentaries are my favorite type of films, because I feel like I just like substance. I like emotion. I like transparency in a sense. And so when you're able to get people, you know, to retell stories, and you get to hear that story from their perspective, especially once you learn how stories are told differently through the media, I think that's what made me such a fan. But my question for you is, what all goes into, for you, and where you are now versus maybe when you started, what do you all feel like goes into the process of making a documentary specifically? Like, is there this kind of like checklist of things that have to be hit, you know, for a documentary to feel successful to you? But then also, just what is that kind of process in general? What is it like taking on like that emotional toll, you know, 9 times out of 10, and whatever the case may be? Just want to get some insight on that.
Yeah, I think the number one thing all documentarians will tell you about making a documentary is access. That you ain't no story without access. And I think what made When Claude Got Shot so successful is that Claude, so the director Brad and Claude were friends for 20 plus years. Their kids had went to, well, now 20 plus years. This was 2014. So almost 10 years ago now that Claude was shot. But yeah, they have been friends for years. Like, their kids went to daycare together. So, and that's how they met. So when Claude was shot, whenever Claude and his family visits Milwaukee, because he has a family of 5, they all kind of disperse amongst family and friends, and someone usually stays with Brad at some point during their visit. And when Claude was shot, his son Soul was staying with Brad, and Brad had to be the one to tell Soul that his dad was shot. And then when Claude recovered, he goes to stay at Brad's house to recover, which is when they began talking about like, hey, should we film this movie? Like, should we film this journey? And you see some of Brad's house in the film. Like you see how soon we start to, I'm gonna send you the film too. You see how soon we start to like film the journey. Like Claude still got bandages on his face when we filming and stuff. So that is because of the access. That is because of the fact that him and Brad were such good friends. That's because he agreed to this journey so early on, and Brad jumped on it and was like, let's start filming right away. Before he even had funding, he was like, we're gonna start filming now. Just have to pay people after. And that's so important. If you don't have access, you don't have nothing. And then throughout the film, as a producer, it was big on my part to start establishing those relationships to continue to get that access. So and obviously I did have to establish a relationship with Claude and Nathan, the teenager who shot him, and Victoria, the woman who shot Nathan, but then also like Nathan's family, because now you're going into a territory where Brad is a white filmmaker, a white male, and you walking up to this Black woman being like, hey, I know your son shot somebody, but I would love to just record y'all and get your story. And she like, I don't know who you are. You know what I'm saying? Black people got trust issues. So, you know, it was a really big part of my job to come in and establish those relationships with everyone, to be able to gain that access. And so over some time me and Brad definitely double teamed this, but me and Nathan's mom definitely built a very genuine and authentic relationship. And she wasn't really fucking with us at first, but over time she was like, I'll give you one interview. That's it. You better ask every damn question you got in that interview. She made us have a very small crew to come into her house and do this one interview. She requested that her friend be there next to her. It was very like, you know, on her terms. And that's how I gotta be sometime if you want that content. Eventually we had to build relationships with the prison that Nathan was in. If we wanted to go, we went inside the prison and shot, and you'll see in the film there's a restorative justice scene. And we went and shot that, and we had to build a relationship with the prison. It was all about access. Imagine the prison being like, no, you can't shoot here, because they're a fucking prison and they can say that, you know. Right. So everything about a documentary is access, and that is going to guarantee your success and the ease of your project and all that stuff. The other thing that I personally will say, just because from my journey, this has been the experience, is money. You need funding for your project. There's a lot of documentary money out here in these streets. I don't feel like anybody should be like, oh, I don't have any money for my documentary. Like, okay, I'm not saying everybody's going to get everything. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying it's easy to apply for these grants and get them. But what I'm saying is there's so much free money in these streets for documentary that, like, I don't ever want to hear somebody being like, I ain't got no money, I can't do it. You know what I'm saying? Fiction films, scripted films. It's dry out here. It is dry to get money for these fiction films. And I just completed my first fiction film, so I know, but still possible for sure. It's still money out here for sure. And I'm just a big believer, and I have been spoiled in my career that I have worked on projects that have had funding. And then that caused me to be the type of person that's like, I'm finna go get funded for these projects I want to do. And there are other filmmakers who, you know, fully fund their projects out their own pocket. That's just not me. That's cool, but that's just not me. I go get the free money. You know what I mean? And then there are people who might take loans, or investors or whatever. Please don't take loans for y'all films. Investors are fine, but do not take loans. But there's multiple ways to do it. My point is, I don't really believe in starting a project without having the money, unless it's a situation like I said, where Brad and Claude was like, let's do this. And it was just like, we need to jump on it right now because it's a documentary. Like documentaries, usually sometimes you do have to start with no money, especially for the development phase. Somebody is starting not getting paid. But when it's time to like really jump in there, you want to have money, whether that's for flights, whether that's for meals, whether that's for parking, but more importantly, to pay your crew. And I never like to be that person that's like, I'm gonna do an IOU. I'm gonna pay you later, because who's to say I'm gonna get that money? Who's to say, you know what I'm saying? Brad, again, that was a different situation because he had years of experience. He knows how to get money. He know people. He know, I ain't there yet. I still got to go grind. So yeah, for me, access is the biggest thing. And then for me, I think also money is the second biggest thing. Like make sure you have some funds for your project. So then it won't hold you up. Nothing will hold you up. Otherwise, you'll end up putting so much stress on your own back trying to get stuff done for free. And that's no fun.
Yeah. No, those are two like really good points. And then to the points you made about access, I did want to ask, so I always think that it's interesting, just our people in general, when we are in these these spaces, especially when we're telling these stories or trying to tell these stories. How important and how much did it mean for you to be a Black woman in that space and be able to build those type of relationships, or knowing that you can have that impact, that your presence alone can build some type of comfortability or some type of rapport that may not be possible at all, without you being there, or without somebody being able, to relate to
Yeah.
the characters or the people that are involved. Just speak to how that felt, and what you kind of, how that's been a part of your career in general. Anything else you kind of want to add, just to any other experiences or anything else you just want to add in regards to how it's felt to kind of take up that space and have that presence.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite parts of the filmmaking, honestly. I didn't realize it until we started doing it, because also, let me take you back and say that you had briefly mentioned earlier in the interview that like a lot of us don't get to do exactly what we want to do right out of college. And technically I was, but I wasn't at the same time, because when I said I wanted to be a director, I always wanted to do fiction films. And I try to stop saying narrative, because documentary is narrative as well. But most people you'll hear say narrative versus documentary. I always wanted to do fiction films, scripted content, because I don't know, that's just what I wanted to do. I had documentary really didn't even become a thing in my mind until I made my first one, which honestly, when I made that film in college, I didn't even realize that was a documentary. I don't think I really knew what documentary was, and that like, I don't know. I didn't really notice the difference necessarily until I started working on When Claude Got Shot. But I was filmmaking nonetheless. It was exciting, whatever. Documentary fell into my lap, and now I'm in love with it, and it's going to be a part of my journey forever. Social justice, same thing. But one thing I did not realize, there was a lot of skills I had that's good for documentary that I didn't realize, because I didn't know documentary was going to be a part of my journey. And one of those things is like, I'm just good at like authentically connecting with people. Like, I am very outgoing. I'm a good talker. I don't have like, I'm not shy or anything like that. I genuinely like talking to people. I have now realized as an adult that I get my inspiration from talking to people. So COVID was pretty hard on me around that time, because I didn't get a chance to like connect the way that I need to in order to create. Like, that's always my journey, is the connection, the creation. I didn't realize how much my authenticity would be able to convert to relationship building, and how much that could help my career, not only because of networking, but also because of access and building relationships for character in documentary. But I came in, and when I met Regina, she's Nathan's mom. And again, Nathan is the teenager who was at the center of all of the gun violence in our film. And we knew we did not want to villainize Nathan. He was 15 when this happened. And we knew that, like, no 15-year-old is just picking up a gun for no fucking reason and shooting people and stealing cars, right? This was at the beginning of Kia Boys when we first filmed this. There wasn't a title Kia Boys yet, but this was the beginning of that era. And we didn't want to villainize him. We wanted to just tell his story. We wanted to just let his mama tell us who he was. And I came in, a Black woman with a son, and knew that, like, even if Brad wanted to villainize him, I wasn't going to let him do that. You know what I mean? And then I think again, my authenticity just like shined through, and like I was able to just build that relationship with Regina. And I would go over there and we would talk about stuff that wasn't even film related. Like, she became like an auntie to me, and I would like jokingly call her auntie and stuff. So, and I started to try to help her other kids get into programs and stuff. And I really just wanted to be a resource in whatever way I could for her. And that was just such a special thing to me. And then I obviously built a very close relationship with Claude, because, he's the center of the story. And that was important to me too. Him and Brad already had that rapport. So that, again, that access was already there. That wasn't really about access. It was just about being close with our subject and having that relationship. Same thing with Regina, or Victoria, who is, again, the woman who shot Nathan in self-defense. All of them. I mean, everyone in the film, everyone who helped out on the film. There's police that we interviewed who, like, you might see 10 seconds of them in the film, but we obviously spent months, you know what I mean, building rapport with them, talking to them, texting them, meeting with them, all type of stuff. So it just became one of my favorite things. And I think for my next documentary, it's going to be the same thing, that like, it's just about rapport. And every other short form documentary stuff that I've done, since then has all been about access and rapport and building those relationships. And honestly, my career has proven that when you build those relationships with people, it takes you so much further, because all the people that I interview, all the people that I interact with for my films and my short form content all end up circling back somehow to be another opportunity, or you know what I mean? And then they keep me in mind when they want to do stuff. So then more job opportunities. So yeah, I just think that that's so important. And not everyone has it. Not everybody can connect like that. But if you want to be a documentary filmmaker, you got to have somebody on your team who can connect like that. And I think Brad was really good at making sure he had representation on his team. As a white filmmaker, he was the best person to make this because of his relationship with Claude. But like, when you look at like certain grants that we got that was for Black filmmakers or Black stories or whatever, or when you look at events that we want to be a part of, you know what I'm saying? It's important to have that representation on your team where I can step in and be like, I'm a lead this one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, that no, I love that answer, and I'm glad that you gave insight to that. I think I'm not heavily in the film space whatsoever, but I do know some people, and I think it's always great talking with Black filmmakers who love telling Black stories, of course, because just learning the different ups and downs and the different things they have to navigate just to make that happen, whether it be like they're in charge or whether it be they're on a team. There's so many different perspectives of that. So I'm very, very grateful, for that insight, because I think it just goes to show it speaks to everything that you talked about in terms of access, relationship building, all of that. And it was a perfect segue as well, because I did want to ask, what was the next project you were able to work on after that, and just what does like your kind of project discography, if you will, or maybe filmography, man. That's the better way to put it. But what else had you been able to work on since that time up to this point?
Yeah, so when Clark got shot, the Impact campaign was a big chunk of my life. And people often don't know what like an impact campaign or impact producer is. So just quickly, you're focusing on the word impact here, right? It's just a campaign or a strategy for how to use this film to create impact in the world. And that's what we did. And we partnered with an organization called the League. The League ended up hiring me to be a part of, the impact campaign. And we focused on Milwaukee. We focused on youth in Milwaukee, and I was the only person on the team who had worked on the film and on the impact campaign. I was the only person on the team that was based in Milwaukee. So a lot of my work was like, on the ground, connecting with people again, creating relationships and building partnerships with people to be able to see the film and hold conversations about gun violence in Milwaukee, next steps, things like that. So that was a beautiful, beautiful journey for me. Throughout our impact campaign, I was able to direct 2 digital series for our impact campaign and for our YouTube page. And so that was really dope. I got to make a lot of good connections from that. To kind of jump ahead a few years, actually, I'll come back. So while we were making, when Claude got shot, I also partnered with a colleague of mine at the time. She was working at 371 on some other projects. And me and her created a series together called Black Girl Train, which is loosely based on her life, kind of also loosely combining a tiny portion of my life, but mostly hers. It's about a woman who is a transracial adoptee and is born in, or like raised in rural Wisconsin. And then she moves to the city for college, where she realizes she's not Black enough. So her friends put her through a Black girl training to teach her how to be Black. So it's a comedy series on what Blackness is, and diving deep into transracial adoption and what that looks like. We had a really fun time creating that, and that won a national competition. We won a few grants. We just kind of took off with that series. We hadn't even made it yet, but we did so much audience building that people just were in love with the concept, and people just like couldn't wait to see it. That is still in the works. It takes years, people, to make things like this. That's still in the works. We're trying to sell it now, but the strike definitely put a pause on things. So Black Girl Training was a really interesting journey. And then from there, I began to write a short film of mine called The Last Week, about a woman who spends one last week with her boyfriend before he turns himself into prison. It took a few years to get that off the ground too, because I was focused on when Claude got shot, but I actually just got done shooting that at the end of September. So I'm really proud of myself for that. Hopefully the trailer will be coming out in the next few weeks, and hopefully you'll see it at a festival next year. And And then from the digital series work that I did, or the digital content that I did for the Impact campaign, I was able to build a relationship and a partnership with a national organization called Everytown for Gun Safety. And they have now hired me and some of my team members to go and do some kind of like highlight videos of these violence intervention programs around the world. So, or around the US, I should say. So we just came back from Atlanta last week, doing videos there, and we have one more city to hit. We did South Carolina, DC, Atlanta, Birmingham, and then we're going to Louisville next month. And so those will come out next year. And now I'm also in development for my next documentary. I don't want to talk about it yet, but yeah. So there's been a lot of stuff going on, and honestly, like I said, everything has like been one thing leading to the next, and it's always been about relationships. Like, this relationship helped me get to this project, or this relationship created this opportunity for me. So yeah, that's kind of where I am. And then I also just got hired onto 2 other projects, which again, I don't think I can talk about yet. So I haven't signed NDAs yet, but I'm just not even gonna go there.
Oh,
But I just
no.
got hired on a 2 documentary project, so I'm excited about those.
Okay, cool. Yeah, awesome. Congratulations on everything. I mean, I think
Thank you.
sometimes, like for me, I hear, especially when I hear somebody, talk about having so many things in the work. One, it's extremely inspirational, but two, I always wonder, like when you're kind of rattling off like these things that you're involved in, or these things that you just finished. For you specifically, is it ever that, man, is it the acknowledgement of I have A, B, C, D, and E going on, or are you're just kind of going with it. You're just, whatever it's time to put energy into, you put energy into, and you just keep rolling to the next thing. Because with everything you said, I'm like, man, not that's a lot in a bad way, but I'm like, man, how do you have your hands in so many different things? But it's cool. Like, it's extremely inspirational to hear. But do you ever kind of have that self-acknowledgement of, oh, I kind of got 5 things going on at once? Or is it more so, yeah, I know, but right now this is what I'm focusing on, and then whenever that's done, this will be next? And is that how you kind of manage it and take it on, and kind of, keep from being overwhelmed in that sense? Yeah, what's your process there?
Yes, and yes, both of what you said. I do, I guess in hindsight, I got a lot going on, but honestly, again, to break it down for people listening even more, the phases of making stuff is not just making it, right? You have the development phase where you just doing a whole bunch of, again, relationship building, computer work. You might be, applying for grants. You might be writing treatments to say what your project is about, whatever. So that's kind of like a slow process. Then you have your pre-production phase, then you have your production, then you have your post-production, your distribution, your impact. Like, all of these are different phases of the filmmaking process. And I did just also, I should also say, I just created my production company. So I'm going to now have my production company pumping out things. Thank you.
Yes, of course, of course.
And I am establishing, I'm still kind of building the bricks of this. Some of my friends are helping me like with the branding aspect of that. So it hasn't fully rolled out yet, but there's a difference between, and I'm working on communicating this to the public better, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but there's a difference between what my company, which is called Hershey Productions, what Hershey Productions creates, and that means that that's fully me all the time, full creator mode, versus what people might hire Santana to do, and then that looks a little different, right? So yes, I have a lot of stuff going on, but they're all in different phases, which means that I'm technically not working on everything every day, not even every week, every month, every year, probably. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the documentary I said I'm developing, that's something I really haven't even sat down and like, it's in my head so far, and I need to sit down and write it out. I've only told my husband and one other person about exactly what it is. Well, 2 other people. And so nothing's popping off with that on a daily basis. Black Girl Training, we've been waiting for the strike to end, so we ain't had a conversation about that project in months. Like, we haven't talked about that project in a long time. My project that I just got done shooting, I have an editor who's doing the trailer, and I haven't spoke to him in a few weeks since I've been focusing on that Atlanta shoot I just had. So yes, it's a lot of stuff. And in my head, I'm like blessed because I did kind of fall into, I do this full time. Most people don't know that. Like, most people don't get to do film full time. And in a lot of ways, I'm blessed, and I'm like, dang, this is great. I got a lot of stuff going on, and it's keeping me afloat to the point where I don't have to go get another job. But at the same time, it's such a great balance that I don't have to be like burning myself out either, because all my projects are not like go, 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 go right now. So yeah, I think that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And there was one more thing I actually wanted to touch on as well. You mentioned it earlier. And I'm just very, curious how you approach it and how it plays a role in your life now, obviously. But you mentioned being a mother, and you mentioned having a son and then having a son in college. As you've been going through your career and as you've just been navigating not only your life journey, but of course your career journey, what role has being a mother played in that? You already kind of spoke to it in regards to how you were able to take that experience and be relatable to somebody that was in your film. But what have been some other ways that just being a mother has played a role in how you've been able to navigate your career and then also just life, as well for you?
Um, I think the biggest thing, like you said, yes, it's the relationship building. Like I have that experience as a mother to be able to like relate to other people. I think that it was very important for me to be able to show my son a hardworking mother and like a mother who has aspirations and dreams, and like, and my husband is the same way. Like we both are very ambitious. So like, and it's crazy because I feel like we didn't really like come from, well, he kind of came from that environment more than I did. My mom was more so like real laid back, real like, I don't really ever remember her having a job. She had jobs, but like not that I really remember. For the most part, she was on disability. And, she didn't go to college. She never really had like that dream that she was working towards. She just was more complacent in life and just comfortable, whatever she needed to do to like pay the bills and move on. And that's cool, I guess, in some ways, but like, to me, there's a big difference between those people. Even now, like there are men in Milwaukee, and I talk to my cousin often about this because she's in the dating world, and like she often runs into people who are just complacent, just like, oh, I'm gonna just work this factory job, I'm gonna just work at Amazon, just make my money, go to the club every now and then, and chill out. And it's like that had never been my life. My life had always been, I have this big goal, and everything I do needs to like lead me to that goal, right? And I think it's important for my son, especially as a man, to see a household and a family that has aspirations and that works every day to get to those aspirations. And that, like, you know what I mean? Because I never want him to be just complacent with where he is. And again, I can't say there's something wrong with that. That ain't my life. So I'm not trying to like shade nobody and say there's anything wrong with that. I just feel like we should all have something that we want, and we should all work towards that. You know what I mean? And if Amazon is what you want, go, more power to you, for sure. Yay, you did it. You're there. Great. Now you can just live life, right? And go to the club and do all the things you like to do. But I'm just saying, I wanted to give him an environment that I didn't have, which was a healthy family and a family that strived for more and that was always trying to get more. And I feel like we've done a really good job at that. And he recently told me he might want to be a filmmaker in the future. So that was also a big, like, that was a big win right there, because oh shit, sorry, my mom called and it messed stuff up. That was a big thing for me, that like, oh, you want to be a filmmaker? So so yeah, that's kind of how being a mom has kind of fed into this. Plus, I mean, come on now, being a parent is like all the motivation you need to keep it moving and keep going. And like, I'm not gonna fail. This is for him. Like, I gotta build a generational wealth for him and his kids and all this other stuff. So, it's the biggest motivator I could ever have and need.
Yeah, no, that is that's beautiful. And it reminds me of my mom, just in terms of like with the son, those things of, and of course, like obviously, like your husband in the picture. So I'm not saying it's just you, of course, but the impact that the mother has specifically, like even when the father is present, the impact that the mother has, and even just, and I don't know, like especially with him being your firstborn, I know how I am being my mom's firstborn. There's just a different, kind of connection there. So that's just beautiful to hear. And I just want to get some insight on that as well. But man, no, we've talked a lot about your journey, your how your love for filmmaking came about, how you develop different skills throughout your journey of filmmaking, and ultimately all the things that you want to do within it. You've worn a lot of different hats. You took on a lot of different projects, and I think ultimately, at least what I've gotten, from the interview, is that you want to make an impact, and you want to make sure that the correct stories are being told and that people understand that they're being told with care. So with everything that we discussed, with everything that we've talked about, everything that you've said or referenced to, what makes you as a filmmaker qualified?
Dang. What makes me, I guess, can you give me a bit more? What makes me qualified to tell
What makes
these
you
stories?
qualified to, well, what makes you qualified to tell these stories? What makes you qualified to be a filmmaker? Like, what makes you qualified to pick up this camera or be behind this camera and tell this story and have this expectation that people are going to want to listen and pay attention, and that you have this expectation of yourself to tell this story the way you want to, and know that's going to resonate with someone or a group of people? Like, what qualifies you to do that?
Um, I'll start by saying this because when I think of qualified, it always gives me the impression that, there's a uniqueness there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I have learned in my career, in my life, that yeah, we're all unique, but at the same time, we're not. Like, yeah, we all have things that make us unique, but at the same time, we are very much the same in a lot of ways. And so I say that to say, I'm not so unique that you can't do it or that someone else can't do it. You know what I mean? But I'm
Yeah.
also unique enough that I have been as successful as I have been thus far, whereas others who might be trying to do the same thing might not have been as successful or might not have been led to the same opportunities as me or whatever. Um, so when I say I'm qualified, it's not because of any sort of uniqueness I have. I do think that one of the things I can appreciate about myself is, like I said, that relationship building, but also just my authenticity. I feel like I have been so authentic during my journey, no matter what has happened, even during winning an Emmy, even, during all these different periods of my life, I have remained who I am at the core. And story has always been so important to me. Story has always been something I've wanted to tell. And like I said, I get inspired by other people and by talking to other people and connecting with other people. And I find character in everyone that I meet. And I just have this innate responsibility and desire to like tell stories that just like either have not been told yet, or because honestly, if we're being honest, most stories have been told already. And that's another part of why I say, like, when you say qualified or when you think of uniqueness, it doesn't just have to be one person. Most stories have been told already. Most stories are just a spin on a story that's already been told, or a unique perspective to a story that has already been told. And so I'm not telling something that necessarily probably hasn't been told before. I'm just telling it in a deeper way, or in a different way, or from a different perspective, or in a different location, or whatever the case may be. And I think I'm qualified to do that because I can genuinely find these experiences and find these stories in the most authentic ways, and be able to say it in a way that may have not been said yet and may have not been understood yet. That's another thing. I do feel like as a grown up, we feel like we know things all the time, but we're always learning. And I have epiphanies every freaking day over the simplest things. And I love getting to the epiphanies, and I love giving people epiphanies by my stories and by my conversations and stuff like that. So I feel like I'm qualified because I'm telling stories in the ways that I want to tell stories, whether they're unique or not, and through a perspective of a Black woman in Milwaukee, which we don't often get to hear because Milwaukee is the city that is just now being able to rise to its potential.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the other thing I'll add to that is that I actually love Milwaukee, which is another thing you don't hear very often at all. You don't
Right.
hear people say they love Milwaukee. You don't hear people say they want to be here. You don't hear people rep Milwaukee in the positive ways. And so I'm qualified because if ain't nobody else gonna do it, I'm gonna put my motherfucking city on the map, and it's gonna be for the right reasons, for the right things, all day, every day. And yeah, so that's just that.
Yeah. No,
Hopefully that
I
was a good enough answer.
No, I love that answer though. I really do, because as much as people stumble on that answer, I don't think I've ever gotten an answer that put it into the perspective that you did. Because as much as we all have our own individual uniqueness, it's not to take away from how similar we all are, and what we're all
Yeah.
potentially capable of. So I love that contrast of like, yes, there's me, and I can only be me, right? I'm the only person that can be me and do me. However, me being me and doing me doesn't mean that you can't do you or necessarily do what I'm doing. It, it can be a different and weird conversation, but I completely understand it. I completely understand that contrast. So I really appreciate that answer, because I don't think anybody has ever gave that other spin on it. So I definitely
Yeah,
appreciate
see, I
that.
like giving people. That's what I meant. I like giving people those epiphanies, those different thought processes. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's period. That's why I'm qualified.
Of course, absolutely. Man, thank you again. Thank you again so much for taking the time and making sure that we get this interview done. Before we leave, is there
Yeah.
anything else that you want to plug, let people know to follow, tap into? You can provide me with links and I can let them know where to find, some of your previous work and everything like that. But anything quick that you want to plug and let people know where they can follow, just go ahead and do that.
Yeah. You follow my web. Well, I don't know if you can follow the website, but you can go check out the website, see the trailers to the stuff I've done, get more information at santanathecreator.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Santana the Creator. I am working on building up my production company and the social media, but we do have a social media called her_she_productions. Her is in a girl, she isn't a girl. And I think that's really all. I mean, I feel like you'll find all my work there. I guess Facebook, if you wanted to do that, Santana Wilson Coleman. Yeah, that's pretty much where you can find me.
Okay. Cool. Well, y'all heard her. Definitely go check out the work. I will definitely be checking out when Claude got shot. But yeah, check out
For
everything
other,
that you
sorry, let me
but
plug that for other people who want to do When Claw Got Shot. That is on Amazon for I don't know $4, $5, something like that. Go watch it for sure. I'm gonna send it to you. You ain't got to worry about it. But yeah, definitely go check that out, y'all. Like again, it's a Milwaukee-based story that won an Emmy, and if ain't nothing else gonna make you watch it, go watch it for that reason. But I promise you, the story is so mind blowing that like you're gonna walk away like whoa. And then write me on Instagram after y'all watch it and let me know what y'all think. I love hearing reflections. I love hearing what people think after watching.
absolutely. Y'all heard her, and she dropped a hella gem. She dropped hella gems in this. I'm not gonna lie. I tell y'all every week, people are dropping gems. So if y'all not picking up gems, I do not know what to tell y'all, and y'all should just be listening a bit more carefully. But thank you so much again for taking the time. Thank y'all for tuning in. And until next week and next episode, I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.